Happy Friday. We are here for the speaker series, and here's a little tidbit of what you're going to hear.
How I feel gets absolutely no vote on what I'm going to do today. It gets no vote whatsoever. I don't care about it. It doesn't enter my brain. How I feel doesn't matter. What I'm going to do is do what I need to do to win. That's what I'm going to do. So feeling, not worried about it. Motivation, not worried about it. I'm going to have the discipline, and I'm going to put forth the effort every single time to make sure that I win every single day.
All right. We are letting everybody trickle on in here on the Zoom platform. So we'll stay here for a couple more seconds and we will get started here shortly. Appreciate everybody joining us. We're looking for a really, really great show today, and will be by far our biggest event yet. So we'll get started here in just a couple more seconds. All right, looks like we've started to level off. So welcome to the AmeriFirst AmeriTrust Speaker Series. My name is Craig Olmstead, and I'll be your host for today's show. We are recording this Zoom broadcast, and in the event we are Zoom bombed, we will shut it down and restart this show within a couple of minutes. We encourage your questions throughout the program, so please use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. If you just saw the intro I just showed a minute ago, you've got a little taste of what you're in store for. We're incredibly privileged to have Jocko Willick back with us again today. It was last August that Jocko joined us, but that sure seems like a lifetime ago now. For those of you that aren't familiar with Jocko's life, here is a brief rundown. Jocko is a highly decorated retired Navy SEAL officer, including the Silver Star, the Bronze Star, and numerous personal and unit awards. As commander of SEAL Team 3's Task Unit Bruiser during the Battle of Ramadi, Jocko orchestrated SEAL operations to help bring stability to that war-torn city. This unit became the most highly decorated special operations unit of the Iraqi war. In 2010, Jocko retired from the Navy and launched Echelon Front, where he coaches individuals and organizations on the leadership principles he learned on the battlefield to help others lead and win. In Jocko's spare time, he's written Extreme Ownership, which we'll be giving away a few signed copies of today, The Dichotomy of Leadership, 4 children's books, and a couple of field manuals, including Discipline Equals Freedom. Today's panelists asking Jocko questions are Ron Burgum, president of the Southwest Division, Mark Jones, co-founder of AmeriFirst, Dave Game, co-founder of AmeriFirst, and Doug Long, president of the Southeast Division. Now, I would normally thank someone on the West Coast for getting up so early for us, but if you follow Jocko on Twitter, you know he's been up for many hours. Welcome, Jocko, and tell us, what time did you get up this morning?
Thanks, Craig. And as you know, I got up the same time I always get up, which is 4:30 in the morning. That's what I do.
Oh, I was going to check. I'm a little slow to the punch there. There it is, right there, 4:30. I follow him on Twitter. That's what he does, 4:30. And it might have been a little late on this one, or he just took the picture a little late. But thanks again for being here. And I want to bring in Ron Burgum for the first question.
Thanks, Craig. Hey, Jocko. Good to see you.
Indeed.
My friend, it's been a year since I've actually been face-to-face with you, but it's great to be back. And thanks for the invitation to be in your house. I'm in the other room, so this is awesome. You know, it's crazy today in the fact that March, call it the 16th, we locked down the United States and went into a pandemic, and everyone went inside the house and stayed in the cave for some period of time. And in some places it's still going on. And, when you think about ownership, you think about the book, you think about your original concept of extreme ownership. Today we have what I say is extreme ownership during extreme times. What I want you to do is kind of unpack that for the audience and just say, how does that work? How does that principle work and apply to a pandemic? And what changes during a pandemic when you're talking about how to own everything changing?
Yeah, obviously I've been getting that question a lot. And the question is, how do we take ownership over something that we can't control, right? There's this pandemic coming, this virus, this disease, we can't control it. How are we supposed to take ownership over something that we can't control? And I always start off by telling people, you control a lot more than you think you do. You can take ownership of more than you think you do. And an example that I give off that is I was on my first deployment to Iraq, and I was in Baghdad. There was a bad guy that was like 300 miles away in another city, and we were supposed to go capture this guy. And as we were coming up with a plan to capture this guy, we decided we were going to take helicopters because it was 300 miles away. You know, we could jump in the helicopters, be there in 30 minutes, grab the guy, come back, and be done with it. So that was our plan. We started developing a little bit more detail around the plan. And as we did that, we started receiving more intelligence. And as we started receiving more intelligence, one of the things that received was a weather report. Now, normally you're not worried about the weather in Iraq because it's just going to be hot. The weather is hot. Well, in this particular case, there was something on the forecast. And what was on the forecast was a sandstorm. And if you've ever seen pictures of a sandstorm in Iraq, it is like out of the Bible. It is just a massive wall of sand that comes through. You can't see anything. It turns dark. And so there was one of those sandstorms was forecasted when we were supposed to do this operation. So I was talking to my boss. My boss says, hey, this sandstorm's coming, so looks like you're gonna have to cancel this operation. And because, he's thinking we can't control the weather, and he's right. I mean, obviously we can't control the weather. No one can control the weather. So maybe we just cancel the operation. But I thought about it for a second. I said, boss, I know I can't control the weather, but here's what I can do. I know we're supposed to execute this operation in 2 nights. Well, tonight I'm going to get in my Humvees and we're going to drive 250 miles to a forward operating base that's a lot closer to the target. And if the sandstorm comes, we'll just take the Humvees and go get this bad guy. He thought about it, nodded his head, agreed. And that's exactly what we ended up doing. We took our Humvees, we drove that night, we got close to the target. If the weather would have been good, we would have had the helicopters pick us up at that forward operating base. We would have go hit the target. But guess what? The sandstorm did come. We took our Humvees, we got the bad guy. So there was a situation that it seemed like we couldn't control, but we actually took ownership over that. We took ownership over that problem and got it solved. Now, that being said, obviously there are situations where you just don't have any control over what's happening. When people individually get a disease, there's diseases that hit you, you have no control over them. So what do you do then? How do you take ownership of that? Well, what you do is you take ownership of how you respond. And when you do that, you don't get emotional, you don't panic, you assess the situation, you make a logical, what you actually do is you make a logical guess of which direction you're supposed to go in. You look at what's happening around you and you say, oh, okay, I think we should go over here. And no one wants to hear a leader talking about, well, I'm going to make a guess, right? No one wants to hear that. But if you're in a leadership position, you never have all the perfect information. No one gives you perfect information. It doesn't exist. The intel that you're getting about a target isn't going to be perfect. So what you do is you make your best guess, and then you take the smallest step you can in that direction. And then you do an assessment. You run a little feedback loop. Did this seem like it was a right decision? Okay, looks good. Got some good feedback. Cool. I'll make another small step in that direction. Then I'll run a feedback loop again. If it's good, if it looks good, cool. I'll keep moving in that direction. So I'll keep making small iterative decisions to move in the right direction. And while I'm doing that, I have to remain humble enough that if I take a step in this direction and I get bad feedback that maybe I went the wrong way, I'm humble enough to say, you know what? That was the wrong way. No problem. Take a step back, adjust your direction, and move again. So the big thing is there's things going on. You can't control them. Take ownership of how you're going to respond to them.
Embedded in that is a lot of fear. Embedded in that unknown. There's a lot of fear going on. And I think that it kind of, it leans into panic. And you see people running into the store, taking all the bread, taking all the water, all the meat's gone. We knew the meat wasn't going to be gone. It's going to be there in a week. The trucks are still coming in unless someone bombs the trucks. But what do you tell people about that today? It's like, come on. How should they think that through in a way that doesn't cause panic? Yeah,
I wrote a bunch of kids books, and one of the kids books that I wrote, it's called Mikey and the Dragons. It's about a little kid that's scared of everything, and he finds a book, and the book is about, and he opens up the book and he reads the book, but the book is about another little kid who's a prince in a kingdom, and in this kingdom the king has died. So his dad has died and everyone's sad, but also everyone's afraid because the only person that used to fight the dragons was the king. And now the king's dead. And so everyone's looking at this little 7-year-old kid saying, all right, well, you got to go fight the dragons now. You're now basically the king. And the kid's all scared, and he goes up to his father's war chest and he opens it up and he pulls out the sword and it's too big for him. And he pulls out the shield and it's too big for him. And now he's even more scared about what's going to happen. And then he finds a note from his dad in the bottom of the war chest. And his dad tells him, listen, everything that you're afraid of about the dragons is in your head. You're going to see that when you get to the dragon cave over the hill, you'll see that there's nothing to be afraid of. You're just afraid because you don't know anything about it. So the kid musters up the courage, leaves the kingdom, goes up the dragon hill and into the dragon cave. And when he gets there, he finds that the dragons are little cute dragons and they're like a foot tall. So just like you said, Ron, people build things up in our heads to be worse than they are. And the best thing you can do when you're afraid of something is just step into it. Go towards it. Go figure out what's going on. When you have a lack of knowledge about something, you're going to be afraid of it. So go get the knowledge. And the best way to get the knowledge is to go get after it.
Roger that, brother.
Well, thanks, Jocko. Thanks for coming back. And first of all, if you haven't seen his book, here's my personal copy. This is an amazing book, and you can see he signed it for me there. Tell me to own it. Love the book. I've read it twice now, and actually I haven't read it. I listened to it, and the nice thing about being on audio, it's you and your partner reading it, so we know where you want the emphasis, and so I love that. So if you haven't, it's an amazing book. I'm going to read a passage from it later on in the broadcast, so you can hear it about leadership. Recently, you did an interview that I saw where you talked about when SEALs are at sea. And you use the acronym SEALs, I think it was sleep, eat, and lift, and how different SEALs executed that differently, and over time there were some different outcomes. And then you kind of put that into perspective with what we're going through now with the new COVID and work at home environment. Could you pick up on where you left off with that conversation and share that with our audience, because I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, it might sound crazy, SEALs, we don't really do it anymore, but we used to go on deployments with the regular Navy on Navy ships, and we'd be on there with Marines, and we would go across the Pacific or across the Atlantic and go to a bunch of different ports overseas, or we would just ride around out in the ocean. And, a normal sailor on a ship, they've got a job, whether they're working on the engine or whether they're cooking food or whether they're working on the radios or whether they're steering the ship. They've got jobs. Well, being a SEAL on a ship, you have no job whatsoever. You don't have anything to do. And so what we end up doing, as you said, the SEAL, what it ends up standing for on a ship is SEAL stands for sleep, eat, and lift, because that's all we do is sleep, eat, and then go lift weights. That's what you should do, I should say, because there's some people that would be in a SEAL platoon and look, we're pretty autonomous too. There was just no work to do. It's not like our boss was giving us meaningless tasks to do. We had a lot of free time. And what you did in that free time, think of it. Think if you had a 6-month block of time where you actually got to do nothing but work out, read, sleep, recover, and then work out again. You should come off those deployments a physical beast. And yet there would be some SEALs that would come off those deployments the opposite of a physical beast. So what does it boil down to? It boils down to people taking ownership of the situation and saying, look, I've got an opportunity to make things happen. And then I will say this, one of the most important things, the guys that would successfully do well on those deployments is they would set a schedule for themselves. They would get up at the same time every day. They would eat at the same time every day. They would work out at the same time every day. They would get on a schedule. When you follow a schedule, it just imposes discipline on your life. Don't stray from it. Especially, now we're dealing with COVID. It's the same thing. Look, if you want to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning now, you can kind of get away with it. If you want to keep your pajamas on all day, you can kind of get away with it. If you want to eat a bunch of crappy foods, no one's watching you. You can kind of get away with it. So there's all these things that you can get away with if you allow yourself to do that. And if you allow yourself to do that, when this is over, you're going to come out of this thing a worse person than you went into it. And there's actually no reason for that. Me personally, I traveled all the time going into COVID. I mean, I traveled every week I was traveling. And all of a sudden, I've been on 3 trips in the last 5 months. So it's a totally different scenario for me. And I'm taking advantage of it. I'm working out more. I'm spending more time with my family. I'm writing more books. I'm just doing the right things. And that is based on the fact that I have a good schedule. I follow that schedule every day. And that's how I live my life. I choose to do the right things and make the right decisions every day.
Love that story. Dave.
Jocko, really, really great to have you back with us. And I too, I'm looking at my copy of Extreme Ownership and love it, and love the pearls of wisdom, and love the many, many sound bites we've had from your first one. I'm sure we're going to double down on that. But you have a plan and you're disciplined. We got that part. I want you to talk to us. We've got on the call today number of real estate partners. We have a lot of our originators on the phone. Back in March, life changed as we knew it. And our business, much like yours, really was about face-to-face contacting. And that evaporated literally overnight. I know in Echelon Front, you are a face-to-face trainer. You've been that way. You go out, you get in the trenches, you hands-on do it. That changed. Something tells me you didn't sit back and just start eating cookies. Tell us how you have embraced what happened and how you have adapted to it. And my guess is probably have excelled at it. So give us a little insight of how you're dealing with the COVID-19 stay at home.
Yeah, beginning of March, 99% of the work that my company did was face-to-face. I got 10 instructors. Everyone was on the road every single week, meeting with companies, meeting with leaders, digging down into what was going on inside their organizations. That's what we did. And COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we had in March, the last, whatever it was, 15 days of March, we had 37 events canceled in just the last 2 weeks of March. So almost immediately it was like, okay, what are we going to do now? And here's what I told my team. I said, listen, in my opinion, this is a virus that's going to run its course. I didn't know anything any better than anybody else did. This is a virus that's going to run its course. A bunch of people are going to get sick. And just like when you get a virus as an individual, as you know, with a virus, you can't do anything about it. It just does what it does. You lay in bed for a few days, then it's over. I said, this thing is going to run its course. I don't know how long it's going to take, but that's what's going to happen. And I said, you know what? We could actually just sort of do a breath hold, which, the guys that work for me are a bunch of retired SEALs. And so they all understand the concept of a breath hold. You go underwater, you hold your breath and you let a boat go overhead, right? If you're on a swim and a boat's coming your way, you dive to the bottom, hold your breath and let the boat go overhead. I said, look, we could do that. We could just take a breath. We got enough money in the bank. We'll come up in 2 months and we'll just get back to work. We won't miss a beat. I said, we could do that, but we're not going to. And the reason we're not going to is even though I think this is just a virus that's going to run its course, I don't actually know that. And not only do I not know when it's going to end, I don't want to sit around for 2 months. What I want to do is figure out a new way to do this. Now, we had a small percentage of work that we had done online throughout the course of Echelon Front. But I just said, look, we're going to take what we have and we're going to expand upon it. And that's what we did. We started doing online engagements almost immediately. We had an online training platform that already existed. And we had built that because some of the companies we work with have global organizations. They've got 100,000 employees all over the world, and they wanted us to train all their employees. So we had built an online training platform. Well, we went to work on that. We tuned that up. We got that up to speed. And then we commenced a whole new training program on EF Online, where we started doing all of our engagements through Zoom. Now, where we got lucky with this, and I'll say it's the same thing with everyone right now, trying to convince someone on March 3rd that doing an online meeting would have almost the same impact as doing a live meeting, it would be very difficult to convince people of that. But what's been beneficial here is I had Easter dinner with my parents on Zoom. My parents who aren't super advanced in technology, they figure out how to work Zoom. And while we were having Easter dinner, they were telling us about all the friends that they've been talking to over Zoom. So everyone now is getting used to Zoom. It's like the early days of email in the SEAL teams. In the early days of email in the SEAL teams, everyone said, what are you talking about? You're going to email me. How does that even work? Don't send me an email. Just come and see me. Now, of course, everyone uses email. So it's the same thing. We've got a new technology, and it's been forced upon people. And I see that as an absolute benefit, because now guess what? I don't have to get on an airplane and spend 5 hours traveling to New York to do a 1-hour meeting with someone, to just get in the plane and fly back again. And here's the other thing. If I'm doing a meeting with, I don't know how many people are on this call, there's 246 people on this call right now. 240, you put 246 people in a room. Well, there's some people at the back of the room, they can barely even see me. Here, I'm 6 inches from everyone's face. And by the way, if someone has a question, they can type it in the Q&A box and I'm going to answer it. So in many ways, this is actually more dynamic and more connective than a live presentation. So once we started getting our clients to realize that, and we were getting our clients to realize that, here's something we did immediately. When we would say, hey, we want to talk to you about what we can do to support you, instead of setting up a call, we set up a Zoom meeting with everyone. All of a sudden, they're sitting here talking to me, and they're thinking, wait a second, if this is this good, why don't we just have you come and talk to the company online? So I think there's advantages that are coming out of this. I think that's what you have to do. You have to pivot. You have to adapt. If you don't pivot, if you don't adapt, you're going to get crushed. And so there's new technology. Everyone is using the technology. Take advantage of it. Don't hide from it. Exploit it. Use it. Make it happen.
It sounds to me like you see this process surviving the end of COVID. You see this as a piece of your business into the future.
Absolutely. I can tell you with 100% certainty that we will continue to do virtual training when COVID is completely gone. Look, am I still going to do live events? Sure. The way I explained it to my team is, you listen to a band on the radio. When they come to play in concert, you still want to go see them in concert. Like, there's something to it, but it's going to be a hybrid, and the hybrid will lean towards virtual training because it's more economical for our clients. It's better for us. We can get more done. We can reach more people. It just makes more sense on an aspect of just being able to scale. There's no way that I could do a meeting in San Francisco, New York, and Texas in one day if I have to go to all of them. Right now, I have days like that all the time. I'm talking to a company in Australia, and 20 minutes later, I'm talking to a company in New York City. Like, that's what's happening. So I think it's a benefit. I think it's something we can take advantage of. And if you embrace it, it's going to work out well for you.
Absolutely. Great answer.
Hey, buddy.
What's happening, Doug?
So listen, I've got a lot of buddies who, obviously this COVID's also done a lot of political stuff, both left and right, and wear a mask, not wear a mask, but the key is I've seen some of my buddies literally just hibernate. The fear is paralyzing them. What do you tell, obviously, what do you tell those guys, but also what do you tell how to stay safe? What are you doing in terms of how you're looking at this pandemic? What are you doing personally? I know that Helen, your wife, has probably seen you more than in the last few months than she's probably seen you in years. So, tell me how you're coaching people to handle what this COVID-19 is doing personally to them at home and also, at work.
Yeah. For me, Doug, obviously I've been at home. My kids came home from college, so we've had a packed house. As far as the way I treat it, when you go outside or you go on an airplane, you got to put a mask on. Cool. That's the rules. Put on a mask. I take vitamin D. Cool. That's something I've always done. I'm not, I'm in an age group and in a health situation where if you look at the threat level to someone in my category, there really isn't a threat level. So for me, it's more about just trying to, make sure I don't get close to people that may be, like for instance, my dad. My dad's 80 plus years old. She's got a compromised immune system. I'm not going to hang out with my dad right now after I get done flying across the country. So I think you just got to be smart about it. Depending on the category, depending on the threat level to you as a human, and everyone's a little bit different. And look, we've all heard some horror story about, well, there's a perfectly healthy, triathlete guy that got it and died. And obviously that happens. That happens when people drive to work in the morning. That happens. And if you look at the percentage chance of that happening, I spent my entire life taking incredible risks, significantly higher than, some 0.001% of me having a really horrible situation. So I'm not going to let it dictate my life. But at the same time, I'm just out making sure I'm not posing any kind of threat to anybody else, and just trying to help the country move in the right direction to get this thing over with.
All right. So we made it through one round with the panelists. Reminder to everybody, if you'd like to see this book here that's behind me, and also here's my copy of that. It's tough to see sometimes in that background. Feel free to ask a question in the Q&A section below, and we will get you a signed copy of that book. The first question actually came a couple of days ago, Jocko, from one of our realtor partners, Blake Conway. And Blake wants to know, I've listened to many of your podcasts. However, I'm not sure I've heard you mention how you maintain a balance between your work life and your personal life while ensuring you're maximizing your efforts in both. It sometimes seems like, like my big how interferes with my big why. Oh, my big how interferes with my big why, even when I block time out.
Yeah, look, you have to maintain a balance. Everyone asks me this question: how do you maintain the balance between work and life? And the answer is in the question. The answer is you have to balance them. And here's what happens, and we've all seen this happen throughout our careers. I definitely saw it in the SEAL teams all the time. I see it in the business world as well. You get someone that wants to do well at work so they can take care of their family. So they put all this time into work, and they work the extra hours, and they work on the weekends, and they answer the phone during dinner, and they make all this effort to do well at work so that they can provide the maximum that they can for their family. And then they look up in 2 or 3 years, and guess what? They don't have the family there anymore. They're gone. So what happened? They let it get out of balance. The same thing can happen in the other direction. You get someone that they want to take care of their family. They want to spend time with their family. So they start gaffing off work. And hey, sorry, boss, I can't handle that project. Sorry, boss, I can't work overtime. Sorry, boss, I can't come in on the weekends. And next thing you know, when times get lean, the first person that gets let go is the person that wasn't really working hard. And now you spend time with your family, but now you can't provide for them. So what you have to do is you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to both of them. Now, I think the most important part, so I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And what you have to do is make sure you pay attention to it. But there's something else that you have to do. And this is something that I had to do, especially when I was in the military, in the SEAL teams. You have to actually talk to your family and explain to them what's going on. Because if you have to work on the weekend and you're looking at your kids saying, hey, sorry, I can't go to the ball game, what they can start to think after a while is that you don't want to go to the ball game because you don't want, or that you can't go to the ball game because you don't want to go to the ball game. And that becomes what they think. When we all know the reality is what you would rather do, of course, is go to your kid's ball game, but you have obligations at work. So I believe it's important to explain to your family, hey, listen, I would love to spend all this time with you, but one thing I need to do as the either husband, wife, as the provider, as the parent, one thing I need to do is I need to provide for the family. And the way I do that is by working hard. And that's doesn't mean I don't want to be with you. It doesn't mean I don't care about you, but it does mean that I'm going to miss some things because this is my job. And working hard is a value that we all should have. And I hope you all have when you get older. So having a conversation like that with your families to make sure that they understand why you're making these sacrifices, it's not for you, it's for them, goes a long way.
Yeah, and we can certainly appreciate that in our business, the mortgage business, that the loan officers are on here, the real estate community, all those partners are with us today. We can clearly understand that. I got a good question here from Gail Bergman. She says, would you say that you were disciplined before entering the military, or do you credit the service for instilling this all-important life-changing behavior?
I think that I had a lot of energy as a kid. And when I got in the military, I was shown, or I saw a little bit of both. I was shown and I saw the fact that this hard work focused in the right direction, which is discipline, that when that happened, it was beneficial. So look, there's plenty of people, and you can see them all the time. There's plenty of people that were in the military for a long time or a short time, and they come out of the military and they have no discipline whatsoever. It happens all the time. There's all kinds of military veterans that are not doing well when they get out. And the reason they're not doing well is because they lack discipline. So, well, not in all cases. In some cases, obviously, people hit hard patches in life. But in some cases, they're not doing well because they lack discipline. So I definitely saw discipline in the military and saw it as something, as a pathway for me to improve my lot in life. And it was beneficial that I saw it there, and then I got to enact it. That's the good thing about the military. You join the military, you got a blank slate. No one cares where you came from. No one cares, what school you went to. No one cares about anything in your past. They don't care about your family. They don't care about anything. Are you going to do your job? Are you going to work hard? That's what people care about. So you get a blank slate when you go in there. I realized that. I realized I had a blank slate, and I realized I could paint the picture that I wanted. And that was, I wanted to be a good SEAL. And that's something that I've been telling people lately. If there's anything that really started to model my life out as a young guy in the military, was I had this one simple thought. And this one simple thought in my head was that I wanted to be a good SEAL. I wanted to be a good SEAL. And that wasn't even that clearly defined, but I wanted to be a good SEAL. So what that meant was every decision that I made, I looked at it through that lens of, is this going to make me a good SEAL? And if you have some driving force like that to hold you accountable, it really does have an impact over time. And that's why I think I had a successful career in the SEAL teams, was because when I made decisions about what I was going to do, the decision was based on one simple question: is this going to make me a good SEAL or not? And you can do that with your life. You can do that as a human being, right? Is this going to make me a better person or not? If you ask yourself that before every decision that you make, you are going to make better decisions. And that will help you with your discipline.
Yeah, I totally agree. Great stuff. I've got a question here that I actually got chills down my spine reading it. And I hope this gentleman or lady from Samsung Galaxy, sending it from a cell phone, looks like, please send me your name. We'd like to get you a signed copy from Jocko. But he says, he or she says, "Hey, Jocko, I appreciate everything you've done. Some of the work has helped save my life after the military. I want to know, as a leader, how do you bring out or show the potential you see in someone, even if they don't see it in themselves? Thanks. Looking forward to a 445 club near me."
Yeah, that's awesome. And this is a very common question. And it's something that I had to deal with a lot in the military and even in the civilian sector. How do you get someone to step up? How do you get someone, when you see someone with some potential, maybe they lack confidence, maybe they don't have quite the knowledge that you want them to have, maybe they just don't have the motivation, and so they're not reaching their potential. What do I do with them? Well, I actually wrote about this in my last book, Leadership Strategy and Tactics, because it was a common problem, and it is a common problem. And so here's what I do. What I do in a situation like that is I use my favorite leadership tool to cure this problem. And that leadership tool is actually leadership itself. So if I have someone that is not stepping up and not becoming a leader, not reaching their potential, what I do is I put them in charge of something. And if it's someone that I think lacks confidence, I actually put them in charge of something that I know that they can do well. I know it's something that they're capable of. I give them that task. I give them that responsibility. I give them that project. And I say, "Hey, you've been doing great with what you're doing. Hey, I want you to step it up a little bit and handle this project for me." And then they elevate a little bit. They handle that project. They get it done. Their confidence goes up. And then what do? Give them a little bit harder of a project. Same thing happens. Their confidence goes up. They get better and better. Now, I had an issue with this when I was at SEAL Team 2. When I was at SEAL Team 2, I was an assistant platoon commander. And my sister platoon, so the other platoon, assistant platoon commander, came and talked to me. And he said, hey, man, I got this guy in my platoon. He's got so much potential. He's a great athlete. He's charismatic, but he's just got like a bad attitude. And he always, kind of walks around and like doesn't want to take ownership, doesn't want to do anything, doesn't want to lead. What do I do with this guy? And I said, what I've done is put the guy in charge. Put the guy in charge of something. And he says, really? He's like, I said he had a bad attitude. I said, yeah, I'm telling you, put him in charge of something and it'll straighten his attitude out. And he goes, okay, I'll try it. So I actually went on a trip for a couple of weeks and I come back and I see the guy and I say, and I actually knew the guy that he was talking about. The guy that he was talking about was kind of he was kind of like a real charismatic, athletic guy, but a little bit of a wise ass, really. He just liked to poke fun at things and he would just throw out negative comments all the time. And it just would kind of bring the platoon down a little bit, this other platoon. So when I come back from this trip and I see the other assistant platoon commander and I say, how's it going with that guy? And he says he got worse. And I was kind of surprised. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, he got worse. He's way worse than he's ever been. And I said, well, how long have you put it? I mean, what's going on? How long has it been like this? He goes, as soon as I put him in charge, his attitude got worse. And it hit me. I said, wait a second, hold on. What did you put him in charge of? And he said, I put him in charge of cleaning the toilets on the second floor of the building. Yeah. I said, no, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean that. I said, you need to put him in charge of something meaningful. Putting someone in charge of cleaning toilets is punishment if they're not a new guy, and he wasn't a new guy. That's punishment. I said, you're punishing him. What you need to do is elevate him. So he said, really? I said, yes. And so they happen to be going through a block of training where you do diving operations, going into harbors and attacking ships, and they're split up into small training operations. And he said, you know what, I'll try putting him in charge of this operation tonight. So he did. He put this kid, he said, hey, you're in charge of this mission tonight. You're in charge of all the combat swimmers. You're in charge of how we're going to conduct it. You're in charge of coming up a plan. And sure enough, the guy like snapped in and you let me run this? Yeah, absolutely. You got a lot of potential. You can handle this. Really? Okay. Comes up with a plan, leads the thing. I remember seeing him because they have big briefing rooms. And I remember seeing this kid as he was getting ready to go deliver his brief, and his whole attitude was different. He's walking, how you doing, sir? I go, outstanding. And I smiled because I knew that he had been given some ownership and he had taken ownership. And one thing that happens in the Navy is you can't give people raises, right? If Doug does a great job on a project, I can't say, hey, great job, Doug. Let me give you a raise. I can say at best case, I can say, hey, Doug, good job. I'll give you a good evaluation and hopefully in 2 years you'll get promoted and make an extra $200 a month. That's the best I can do as far as financial compensation. But what I found in the Navy, and I found it holds true in everything, the best compensation that you can really give somebody is control over their own destiny, is ownership, is being in charge of being a leader. That's the best compensation that you can give somebody. And I saw it crystal clear with this guy. As soon as he was put in charge, as soon as he was given ownership, he took it and he held his head up and he did a great job. And that goes right with a question I get all the time, which is how do you get people to take ownership? And I just answered the question. You get people to take ownership by actually giving them ownership. When you give people ownership, they will step up, they will elevate, and they will take it. Now, will you find people occasionally that when you give them the opportunity to excel, they gaff it off and they don't want to do it? Yeah, that happens. There's a bell curve in any organization, any team. It happens in SEAL teams. There's some guys that they end up just being a shooter, and that's okay. You need some shooters. But most people, when you give them the opportunity to control their own destiny, you give them the opportunity to step up and lead, they're going to take it. So that's my recommendation too. Samsung Galaxy S8 Active.
Love it.
And by the
Love
way,
it. Great story.
and also to that anonymous person, you said you served in the military. Thanks for your service. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Next question from Gavin Fitzpatrick. Oh, Ron, we're going to jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to steal a question. Just have to. I do want you to. Yeah, you're going to go to the one on the mask question. Craig was. So that's a great question. You could hit because I think it's G. Swatel's asked it like 3 or 4 times. It's like, what about the mask? What about the mask? What about the mask? Man, I don't want to wear that mask. What do you tell these people that don't want to comply with the rules? How do you feel about the policy of wearing a mask out in the public, walking with your kid in the beach? What do you tell people that just are pissed, that don't want to do that? They're upset about it. They feel like it's an invasion on them. On how they should be. It's not constitutional. So it's a great question. I hear it all the time. I see it all the time. There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube you can see about people screaming because of the mask.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it's an invasion into someone's brain if they're letting it bother them that much. I had something happen where, when I was on one of those shipboard deployments, and we were waiting. You used to have to wait in line to go and eat food. So you wait in line, and we'd get there early, and when we're waiting in line, you'd be all bored, so you're leaning up against the wall. Just leaning up against the wall, waiting in line. And the guy in charge of the mess decks, some guy that's where he has ultimate authority, is to make sure that line stays in order. And so I'm sitting there one day, and I'm leaning up against the wall, big, tough Navy SEAL leaning up against the wall. And this little guy that's in charge of the line on the mess decks comes up and says, "Hey, get off the wall." And you know what I did? I went like this. No big deal. People put out some rules. This thing's not going to drive me crazy. Fine. Yep, no problem. You want me to get off the wall? Get off the wall. They pass these big ordinance. You need to wear a mask. Look, if that's what the rules is, I put a mask on. This doesn't ruin my day. I don't think it's if you want to take that and you want to mentally extrapolate that out into your constitutional rights, and you want to think about it from that perspective on a daily basis, and that's what you want to be focused on, well, then that's what you're going to be focused on. I actually have work to do. I have things I'm trying to make happen. I have things I'm trying to achieve. And I'm not that focused on a little rule that people are throwing around one way or the other. That's my feeling. My feeling is I don't have a big feeling. I'm not getting super hyper emotional about it. I know that people are making it into a line in the sand in life, and in the country. Like if people are forced to wear a mask, I mean, the one side you've got, if people are forced to wear a mask, then that's the beginning of the end of our nation. The other end is if people aren't wearing a mask, you're going to kill people and everyone's going to die and we'll never get out of this. So you got two extreme viewpoints. And from what I can tell, both those sides are thinking about the wrong things in life right now. I'm thinking about, how do I move forward? How do I do functional things? How do I make the world a better place? How can I help my family? How can I help my friends? How can I help my clients? That's what I'm thinking about doing. You're not
letting that get in your head. You're not letting that get in your head. It's like, hey, check, put that mask on and moving on. Love that. Let's talk about something that you can't take, the breathing dunk on, and you can't get the chokehold on this. And this was about lying. So we'll talk about lying for a minute and telling the truth. So telling the truth as a leader, telling the truth to customers, giving bad news. Because I heard you talk about this, about, hey, tell the truth. You got to tell the truth. So let's talk about what that means in the application of that people don't understand. That's a real powerful concept that a lot of leadership doesn't understand, especially in this time, because they want to give information they don't even have. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, the big thing about telling the truth. So yeah, as a leader, you want to tell the truth. And as a human being, you want to tell the truth about what's happening. And it's real easy to tell the truth when things are going great, right? Hey, we're doing great. We're expanding. We're building. We're growing. everyone's getting raises. We're hiring more people. Everyone loves to tell that. We're opening up more offices, right? Everyone loves to tell that truth. People don't like to tell the truth when we're cutting people and we're shutting down offices and we're losing money. People don't want to tell the truth about that. But you actually have to tell the truth in both those situations. You have to tell the truth about what's happening. If you don't tell the truth about what's happening, then people don't react to it. And also, when you don't tell the truth about what's happening, they're going to make up their own truth. It's called a rumor. And I promise you that the rumor is going to be way worse than the truth actually is. So you have to tell the truth. So then the next question that comes is, well, okay, Jocko, that sounds great, but how do I tell the truth when I don't actually know what's going on? And here's the answer. I mean, we just talked about it. What's the truth on a mask? What's the truth? I can promise you there's people that are saying that this will save lives. There's people that say it makes no impact whatsoever. What's the truth? I don't know what the truth is. And so what do you do when you don't know the truth? You actually tell the truth about what you don't know. And you say, hey, I'm not sure what the truth is. I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know what this part of the pandemic means. But here are some things that we are going to do. Here's some possible outcomes, and here's some contingency plans that we are working on. So if it goes in this direction, we'll be ready. If it goes in this other direction, we'll be ready. And I think a lot of times as leaders, we feel like we should know everything. We feel like we should know everything because we should be the expert. And the worst thing is when you do that, people know that you don't know everything. And also, if you make a bold statement about something, I can just about guarantee you Murphy's Law is going to bite you, because if you say, hey, this pandemic's going to be over in 2 months, I promise you it won't be over in 2 months. And if you say this pandemic's going to last for the rest of the year, I promise it'll end early. So what you should do is actually say, listen, there's a lot of different opinions of how long this is going to last. I'm actually not sure, but here's what we're going to do to be ready for if it doesn't last long. And here's what we're going to do to be ready if it does last long. Either way, we're sticking together. We're taking action. We're moving forward.
After that, buddy. Mark.
So Jocko, one thing I didn't mention earlier was that opening video that we showed of you. I wake up to that every morning. Every morning at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and my head's going, I don't feel like working out. And I hear Jocko Willick say to me, how you feel doesn't get a vote. And it gets my ass out of bed, and it gets me on the treadmill, it gets me going. So thank you very much for that. I would like to read a passage from your book. It kind of dovetails with what Ron just asked you about. And I wish I had heard this when I was a young leader, because it is so important and it's very critical right now. It dovetails to what you were saying. And this comes right out of Extreme Ownership. Every leader and every team at some point in time will fail and must confront that failure. We are by no means infallible leaders. No one is, no matter how experienced. Nor do we have all the answers. No one does. We've made huge mistakes. Often our mistakes provide the great lessons that humbled us and enable us to grow and become better leaders. For leaders, the humility to admit and own mistakes and develop a plan to overcome them is essential to success. The best leaders are not driven by ego or personal agendas. They are simply focused on the mission and how to best accomplish it. Again, for our leaders on the phone, could you share your thoughts about that concept and how that dovetails with what we're dealing with right now in this environment?
Yeah, look, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, if what we do is try and deny that those mistakes happened, everybody knows it. Everybody can see when we try and do that as leaders. Not only that, so not only you think it makes you look good to say, well, this wasn't really my fault. Everybody can see right through it. But what's even worse than that, not only do people lose respect for you, but now you're not taking ownership of the problem. And so the problem isn't going to get solved. It's just not going to change. So take control over what you can take control over. Take ownership when things go wrong. It's just a fundamental concept. And it's interesting because I'm sitting here and you guys kind of set me up with these questions that make me seem all cool. And like, I'm up every day and I'm on the path and I'm eating the right foods. And that's great for me to sit here and talk about that. But as you know, the opening chapter of the book, Extreme Ownership, is about a horrific incident that happened where we had a friendly fire incident. and a friendly Iraqi soldier was killed by my SEALs, and one of my SEALs was wounded by friendly American forces, and all this took place with me as the senior guy in charge. So yes, we make mistakes. We all make mistakes. When you make those mistakes, what you have to do is own them. And look, it applies to everything that's going on right now. There's been I think looking at the politicals, at the politicians, I haven't heard any politicians say, you know what? Hey, I made a misjudgment here. Here's what we're doing to correct for it. I haven't heard anyone say that. It would be like music to my ears if someone would say,
and it's constantly happening.
Yeah, there's all kinds of mistakes. Why are there mistakes being made? They're not even mistakes. It's like this. Hey, this is what it looks like right now. Here's what we're going to do. Hey, it turns out we should have done this. I'm making an adjustment. Hey, I was wrong in my first assessment. And here's where we're moving now. No one's saying that. In fact, it's even worse. What's happening is when leaders make mistakes, they dig in. They dig in behind those mistakes and they say, no, I'm right. See, I'm right. And everyone's looking at them saying, wait a second, we need to make an adjustment to what we're doing. So, I mean, it's been wild, right? It's been wild. I mean, you know, talking about the mask, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but apparently someone's interested in it. At one point, the government said, put a mask on. Then they said masks don't help and don't do anything. And then they said, no, they do help. And then they said they're mandatory. What are we supposed to make of that? If someone said, hey, we originally thought that masks didn't do anything. Here's why we thought that. We were wrong. Here's how they benefit, and here's why you should wear them. People would say, okay. Or if someone would say, look, we made a big deal about masks, but it turns out they're really not necessary. We miscalculated that. You don't really need to wear them unless you're in these certain situations. Okay, sounds good. But no one really says that. They just dig in to what their original statement is, don't admit when they're wrong, don't own their mistakes, and it leaves the worst part is it leaves the followers, it leaves the people in a state where we're saying, who are we supposed to listen to? And
unfortunately, I think leadership and politics are two separate places right now. So
yeah,
thank you for this. I for the young leaders out there, I think this is a really important point, and you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to be committed to the end goal and admit when you make the mistakes, adjust your course and move on, which is, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. I wish I'd have heard it when I was about 22 years old.
I often get told that, I wish I had these books when I was 20 years old. And I say, I wish I had these books too when I was 20 years old. Unfortunately, I had to go and learn all these lessons and write them down.
A follow-up to Mark's question, Jocko. Don't you think that humility, being able to own the outcome, good, bad, or indifferent, isn't that going to garner more respect from your team? And where do you get your best learning? Is it from success or failures? Let me ask you that question first.
Yeah, well, those two questions go together, because I'll tell you what, if you're humble, you will get your best learning from when you make a mistake, because you'll be humble enough to say, oh, I made a mistake and here's an adjustment I need to make. If you have a big ego, guess what you say when you fail? You say, that wasn't my fault. It was Dave's fault. He didn't get me what I needed in time. He didn't give me the support I needed. He didn't turn in his paperwork in time. That's not my fault. It's Dave's fault. If you're humble enough to say, oh, you know what? I actually didn't give Dave a good enough heads up. Mm-hmm. I didn't tell him what documents were needed. That's my fault. Now I fix it, and now I get better. If I have a big ego and I win, what happens? I say, hey, I'm great. Because if you're humble, we used to have missions where we'd go out on a mission and we would make mistakes and we'd get away with them. We'd go out and make a mistake. A guy would move in the wrong way. And an element would move to the wrong position. We'd lose track of him for a minute, find him again and go, ugh, but they didn't get contacted by the enemy. We didn't come back and high five and say, see, look, we did great. We came back and said, oh, we really screwed up and we got away with it. We don't want to get away with it. So humility is the most important characteristic for a leader and really for a human to have. And the reason is because if you're not humble, you're not learning. You're not progressing because you think you know everything. So
wisdom,
yeah,
my friend. Hey, I'm gonna go, a quick question for you here. I'm going to read a quick quote that you said. And it says, to prioritize your problems and take care of them one at a time, the highest priority first. Don't try to do everything at once or you will not be successful. So in extreme leadership, one of your principles talks about to prioritize and execute. In today's world, especially in our business, we are a blessed business right now. We are so busy. We're having a hard time hiring, and because of that, we have a lot going on. And it's so easy. We harp on do what's in front of you, take care of the job in front of you. Don't get sidetracked. Speak to us for a minute about how important it is to prioritize and execute, and how you do it.
Yeah, I used to see these young SEALs in training situations that I would put them into where I'd give them multiple problems all at the same time. And the young SEAL leader would look at one problem and then he'd switch to the other problem, and he'd switch to the other problem and switch to the other problem. And they just wouldn't be able to solve any of the problems, because to solve the problems, they would need to put focus on those problems. This doesn't mean that you ignore the other things that are happening, right? There's actually a name for that. It's called target fixation. So if I go into a situation and there's a wounded guy and there's some civilians to deal with and we're getting shot at and I don't know where all my troops are, I need to figure out what my biggest priority is, right? I got a wounded guy, I'm getting shot at, I've got some civilians to deal with, and I don't know where all my people are. Those are 4 major problems that I've got. And what I would see a lot of times, these young SEALs, what they would focus on would be the wounded guy. They'd see a guy wounded, they'd run over to try and help that guy that just got shot, and then guess what would happen? They would get shot because they didn't solve the actual biggest problem, which was the fact that there was someone with a machine gun shooting at them all. That's the biggest problem. I don't care what else is going on in the world. If there's someone shooting at you with a machine gun, that's your biggest problem. But I would have guys try and do everything at once, and they would just not solve any of the problems. And the reason that they would focus on the wounded guy is because they would get emotional. They'd get emotional about it. The guy'd be screaming at the top of his lungs. They'd hear him screaming. They'd go over and try and help him. That wasn't the biggest problem. So what I had to do is teach these young SEAL leaders to detach, to take a step back, detach from all that chaos, detach from all that mayhem, and most importantly, detach from their own emotions so that they could see logically what was happening and they could make a right decision about what the actual biggest priority is. I mean, you get this in the civilian sector too. You get a client that is yelling and screaming about a loan that's supposed to close, but their loan isn't supposed to close for another 5 days. And meanwhile, you've got a client that's actually not saying anything, but there's a critical situation that needs to be solved now to get their loan closed on time. Those are some things that could happen where you might get distracted by the emotions. But if you actually look at the priorities, you realize what the number one priority is. So you have to do this. And what's interesting, Dave, is I'm talking about this in a very tactical way, whether it's a wounded guy or whether it's a loan that you're working on. But think about it in a bigger perspective. Think about it in a life perspective, right? What are you doing every day to make sure that your priorities are correct for the long-term win, right? An example, a clear example, if you're not taking care of your health every day, you look up in 5 years and you're not healthy anymore and you're in the hospital, you get sick, there's all kinds of problems. You need to prioritize that thing every single day so that you don't end up in a long-term bad situation. So don't just think of it as a tactical thing that's right in front of you. Think about the long-term implications as well of not putting the priorities in the right places at the right time and focusing on them when they need to be focused on.
Great. Go ahead and get some Q&A while we still have Jocko. Pick one or two because we got.
Yeah. I saw your email or your text. I appreciate that, Doug, and Kathy Anderson appreciates that as we're getting close to the top of the hour. My father was in the Air Force. He has now been laid to rest at the Florida National Cemetery. He was always such a positive man. How do you get the people around you to be positive during this time in our country? There's also a number of questions about kids. And so maybe kind of answer that question twofold, maybe with that. And then also how do you keep the kids positive and get them to understand what's happening in the world today?
Yeah, look, as far as positive attitude, have fun. You know, no one knows, but in the SEAL teams, it's constant comic relief. Even in the most stressful situations, bullets flying around. You know, I remember one time guys were getting shot at, and you know, someone close impacting rounds, and someone, you know, from a covered position says something like, "Man, I'm glad these guys can't shoot any better." And you know, like, people are laughing while you're getting shot at. That's what's going to happen. So don't take yourself too seriously. Make sure you're having a good time. Make sure you have fun with things. As far as your kids go, look, get your kids the book, Way of the Warrior Kid. This is the first kids book that I wrote. Get them that book. Start getting them on the path. They can take advantage of this situation too. You know, and we talked earlier about the sleep, eat, and lift being on a ship. There's the movie Groundhog Day, which this is also very similar to Groundhog Day. If you've ever seen the movie Groundhog Day, Bill Murray is in this weird situation where he lives the same day over and over and over again. And in the first part, when it first happens to him, what does he do? He becomes a complete glutton, and he's just drinking and smoking and eating donuts by the dozen, and he's not happy. And then what he does is he starts to learn. He learns how to play the piano. He starts to learn poetry. He starts working. He starts doing all these things that are positive, and he ends up getting out of this curse. It's the same thing here with your kids, with your family, with yourself. This isn't a curse right now. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. It's an opportunity to be with your family. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to get more healthy. All these things you can do right now as long as you get up in the morning and you get on the right path. That's what keeps me with a positive attitude every day. All these things that are happening, they're not challenges. They're opportunities. Take advantage of them.
Yeah, totally agree. And likewise, if you haven't seen the movie Groundhog Day, I highly recommend it. It's a good one about these crazy days we got. So one last question, Dawn Dilson, I believe she's got a son in the military, and she sent an email to me a week or so ago and wants to know when and how do you plan your day, and how do you set the expectations for that day's to-do list?
Yeah, you know, I just prioritize and execute. I know that there's only one little trick I'll tell you about this. I prioritize and execute, so I look at what's the most important thing that I have to get done, and then when I start working, that's what I do. I get done the most important thing that I got to get done, and then I go on to the next most important thing. The only thing that I do sometimes is I will take something that is absolutely has to be done, and I'll put it maybe towards the later part of my day, so that I know I can get a bunch of other things done. And I know when I get to that thing, I can't blow it off. I have to get it done. So it's a little trick. It's something that I do sometimes, but most of the time what I do is I look at what's the most important thing I have to get done every day. I make a list of those things. I prioritize them, and then I go and execute the list. You know, I say this all the time, you know, think about this. Before you go to bed at night, write down what you should do tomorrow. Write down what you should do tomorrow before you go to bed. Then when you wake up in the morning, go do those things. And think about, if you did that every day for a week, think about where you'll be. What if you did it for a month? What if you did it for a year? What if you did it for 2 years? You'll be in a totally different spot. Write down what you know you need to do, and then wake up and go do it.
At 4:30 in the morning.
Got to get those extra hours in. The enemy's sleeping.
All right.
I'm getting after it.
We are all out of time. I'd like to bring Ron Burgum back in here, and I know he's in the room next door, and I'm not purposely putting him in harm's way, but a week or so ago, we had a conversation. We had Dan Henderson on our last speaker series a month or so ago, and I asked him, I said, all right, Ron, you know them both. Jocko and Dan in the octagon, door closes, who wins? It took him a half a second to say, Hendo.
Well, Hendo on the punch beat, on the ground.
I'm just saying.
I don't know. Jocko on the ground, I think you can take him on the ground now.
You know, I've trained with Hendo. Hendo's an incredible athlete. He's an incredible guy, and he's tough as nails. I'm glad I don't have to get in the cage with him.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Rod, bring this home.
Hey, I tell you what, I took some pictures of the questions because there's over 38 unanswered questions in the queue. And I've got a session with the man of the hour here, Jocko, after this. And I said, how many books do you have? And he says, I have books. Okay, that's all I need to know. I'm going to get those books signed. I'm going to get those books and I'm going to walk out. I got a big vehicle out here to put them in and I'm going to take them with me. So I appreciate everyone for joining us. So Jocko, I could have literally I'm glad I have a couch. I could sit here for hours and keep going and going and going. And this was so different than the last one because we had a lot of Jockoisms in the last one, which was, what do you do about procrastination? You're like, don't procrastinate.
Oh,
and of course, the one that Mark.
Hang on, Ron. You just ruined it. I'm going to play that on the way out. But go ahead. Keep going.
I'll let you close with that. But Mark, this is awesome because he every day. I didn't know that every day he wakes up to this. Your emotions don't matter. How you feel doesn't get a vote. So
he haunts my mornings.
So we didn't get a lot of Jocko-isms today necessarily like we did before. But we got a lot of content that relates to, reality today. How do we adapt? What do we adjust to? How do we get better? And I think at the end of the day, it's all about that. It's all about what can we do to move the dial, take one step forward, not one step back, and improve no matter what, but keep true to yourself. So I appreciate everything you do for us, my friend, being part of the family, being a brother of mine for over 25 years. And we're going to do a lot more things together. So thanks for joining the team.
Right on. Thanks for having me, all.
Thanks, Jocko.
Stay safe and go get some.
Appreciate your service.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Roger
Absolutely.
that.
All right. For those, stick around here for the next minute and 3 seconds, and you'll see another Jocko-ism.
Because it's really, really simple. How do you stop procrastination? You stop procrastinating. That's what you do. When there's something that needs to get done, you don't hesitate, you don't walk around, you don't think about how you're gonna do it, you attack it and you get it done. And that's what you do. That's how you stop procrastination. And what you will eventually do is you'll get yourself to where you have a habit where procrastination, I'll tell you right now, procrastination for me, it makes me angry. I think procrastination in my brain is a personal affront to my will. That's what it is. It makes me mad. If I start to procrastinate something, I get angry and I immediately want to attack the procrastination and kill it. Yes. So that's what you do. You don't want to procrastinate? Roger that. Guess what? Stop procrastinating and go get it done.
All right. Be smart. Be safe, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you again real soon for our next speaker series. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend.